Welcome to Crossroads. The Chinese Communist Party is rolling out a new program to revive Marxism. Now, look, this is being done under the label of Xi Jinping thought and finding a way to create a new form of Marxism that can be used under the new CCP system. Now, look, alongside this, the Communist Party is bringing back policies that we haven't really seen since the days of Mao Zedong, the former leader of the CCP. These are programs of militarization, deeper CCP control, and consolidation of power under the Chinese Communist Party. Now look, the CCP is trying to create a new system of communism, and this may be the biggest shift that just came out from the recent top-level meetings of the regime's Communist Party. Now, Bitter Winter says this. They said on May 31st, the CCP organ People's Daily, one of the main state-run media of the Chinese Communist Party, it says they published excerpts from the main speeches given at the May 28th, quote-unquote, seminar on studying and implementing Xi Jinping's thought on culture. They note the main slogan of the seminar's speeches is about what they're calling second integration. And they're referring this to as a concept that Xi Jinping is advancing for some time now. The first integration in the scheme, they say, dating back to the origins of the CCP, was between Marxism and China's special circumstances. The second one, according to Xi Jinping, goes one step further and integrates orthodox Marxism with traditional Chinese culture. So in other words, what's happening right now is the first integration was the first founding of essentially the communist idea, Maoism. The second integration, the one coming about right now, this is a new form of communism under Xi Jinping thought. They're creating a new type of communism. Now, we notice here the second integration, the one they're talking about right now, according to the current president of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, historian Gao Xiang, quote, liberates us from the binary opposition between tradition and modernity. They say it is an emancipation of the mind and a new awakening. That's what they're calling it, at least. They note that this grandiose claim is justified by the idea that the second integration overcomes the, quote, lack of confidence in the history and culture of the Chinese nation and the blind superstition of Western culture and Western centrism. They note that Marxism, after all, originated in the West. However, with a curious use of Christian categories, Gao explained that Marxism is a soul that can be incarnated in different bodies. They say the second integration, the one they're doing right now, is the experiment where the Marxist soul incarnated into the body of Chinese tradition. They say, however, not all bodies are adequate to welcome the Marxist soul. Thus, quoting Xi Jinping, Gao explains that Chinese traditional culture should be treated with discrimination. And that's the important part here. Because, of course, the Chinese Communist Party tried to destroy Chinese traditional culture, and when they use it like this, it's not actually traditional Chinese culture. What they're doing instead is creating a new type of Maoism, essentially, but under Xi Jinping thought. Now, Bitter Winter notes that whatever is incompatible with the Marxism should be eliminated, according to these ideas. Now, look, remember that the Chinese Communist Party has its own propaganda around things like this. This is not a cultural revival, as they're kind of making it seem, right? This is more of a Marxism revival. And it's a campaign very likely that's going to be used to wipe out actual traditional Chinese culture. All communist systems, no matter where you go, they tend to adopt Marxism into the specific traits of their countries. This is why we had Leninism. This is why we had Stalinism and Maoism and Trotskyism, and a very long list of other isms that are essentially just adaptations of Marxism under different systems in different countries. Communism has always worked this way. Now, under Xi Jinping, the regime has been pushing for Xi Jinping thought and the concept of what they call socialism with Chinese characteristics. This new campaign to go back to Marxism directly and not to Maoism, for example, which you might think they would, suggests really that Xi is trying to create his own new brand of Marxism. The new Xi Jinping thought, essentially, will likely be known in the future as Xiism. That's probably what we're going to call it. In a very similar way to the way we now talk about Maoism and all the rest of the Marxist adaptations. And again, this is important because under the Chinese Communist Party, Maoism has been the defining interpretation of communism. The problem with Maoism is that Maoism, because they used it to create the revolutions in China, more worked through minority groups in China. Now under the CCP, the Han Chinese are essentially the dominant group, and the minority groups are not the ones wanted. The Tibetans, the people from Xinjiang province, the Hong Kongers, maybe the Taiwanese in the future. These individual groups are seen instead as threats against the Communist Party. And so the Maoist ideas and ideas of Maoist revolution don't really work under the new CCP system. Not to mention the fact that they tried to integrate themselves with global markets. They become kind of a free market form of communism. They call it state capitalism. Going back to this idea of state control of the capitalist systems, i.e. socialism. Whereas under Maoism, for example, all businesses and farms and so on were basically under the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. They were military run. The CCP controlled everything. Now, what they're doing is instead of going back to Maoism and doing a Maoist revival, they're going back to Marxism itself. And they're creating a new interpretation of Marxism for the new Chinese system. In other words, what's about to happen with this new adaptation of Marxism, again, currently being developed using what they're calling Xi Jinping thought, is that it will likely try to modernize Marxism. And it will very likely play into some Maoist principles because, again, they integrated Marxism previously into the Chinese system, but this one's going to be adapted to current-day China. And with this, we'll very much likely watch the Chinese Communist Party try to restart movements to recreate the communist system. Remember, whenever communism is establishing itself, you tend to see a few things. You start to see purges, you start to see famines, and you start to see systems to integrate into the society the new communist idea. And in China right now, what we're very likely going to watch are things similar to the Cultural Revolution, the new announcement on the new so-called second integration, as they're calling it, and its focus as well in Chinese culture. This will very likely lead to a CCP campaign very similar to the Cultural Revolution under Mao Zedong. During the time which, by the way, they were trying to destroy traditional Chinese culture. They were going after what they called the four olds, old beliefs and old superstitions and old traditions and so on. They wiped out the old Chinese thinking. They wiped out the old Chinese ideology and did campaigns to integrate into the country a new ideology. Now remember the Chinese Communist Party's new programs for anti-corruption as we're watching, among other Communist Party leadership systems, right? Similar to the party purges and these self-criticism seminars that took place under Maoist policies. Now we'll be talking more about this after a quick break.
Experts agree, one of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. The Chinese Communist Party is trying to revive Marxism under a new interpretation of merging it with Chinese culture. Now look, this is not just limited to theory. It actually represents changes taking place all throughout the country, all through China, from the farms to the military, from businesses to the CCP leadership. It appears right now that the Chinese Communist Party is planning to become more isolated from the world stage. And as new alliances are forming with, growing threats of war, the regime is trying to roll the country back to Maoist-era policies. Now, the CCP has new programs for anti-corruption among the Communist Party leadership. And for those of you who know the history of the CCP, that anti-corruption campaign among the CCP leadership itself is something they did before. It was similar to the party purges and these self-criticism seminars that were taking place under Maoist policies when the CCP was establishing itself. Right now as well, there's the return of military units being established under some of the Chinese Communist Party's major businesses. And that's also similar to Maoist-era policies that had all the businesses under the People's Liberation Army, the military of the Chinese Communist Party. There are new campaigns to carry out purges within the PLA itself, the Chinese military. In fact, the CCP, they just purged 2 top former military leaders. Just a few days ago, in fact, the CCP expelled 2 former defense ministers from the Communist Party. Now look, in another recent move, the CCP just passed a new law to bring back collective farming programs. And that's also something really significant because, again, when they were establishing communism in China, they took most of the population and threw them into collective farming programs almost exactly like this. But like aside from that, it also restores one of the main programs under Mao-era China. Again, when most people in the country were placed in collective farms. They are reviving the old policies of the CCP. Now look, on the surface, these campaigns look like Xi Jinping is trying to consolidate power. I think that's the way it's been framed for a while like that. And the reason is, previous campaigns under Xi were actually heavily about that. Xi Jinping was, for several years, trying to consolidate power. He's trying to walk in the footsteps of Mao Zedong and become the chairman of the CCP. Now, look, previously, a lot of those campaigns, the anti-corruption campaign, other things he was doing to, again, consolidate power, that was tying into factional battles within the Communist Party. Xi Jinping had one faction. The main rival faction was under former CCP leader Jiang Zemin. Jiang Zemin is now dead. Neither of them was necessarily good, per se. Both of them were communist systems. Both of them were at each other's throats. Technically, the Jiang faction had more blood on its hands. Again, Jiang Zemin rose to power through the Tiananmen Square massacre. He was also the architect of the persecution of Falun Gong. And through that, of course, carried out one of the largest religious persecutions now taking place in China, including, for example, using religious believers as living sources for organ transplants. They kill them for their organs. Jiang Zemin also created a type of kind of pay-to-play system using the persecution. Under the Chinese Communist Party, if you want to rise through the ranks, how do you do it? Well, you need to demonstrate loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party. And under Jiang, that meant getting blood on your hands. That meant playing into the persecutions. That meant that everybody is equally guilty, and so nobody's going to backstab you because, well, if they go down, you go down with them. That was the Jiang faction. Now, Xi Jinping essentially beat the Jiang faction in that whole power struggle, and now he's walking the path of Mao Zedong, become the chairman of the CCP, the ultimate leader. Now, that campaign, again, the whole consolidation of power, that mostly came to an end last year. Xi Jinping managed to launch a 3rd term and began launching new campaigns right after that to create reforms within the Chinese Communist Party. And essentially, he achieved the goal of consolidating power under himself. He has now achieved it. Now, again, if you understand Mao Zedong, there were 2 stages of it. The beginning was, of course, beating off the Kuomintang, becoming the head of the, again, China, at least mainland China. And after that, then launching campaigns to establish his new communist ideology, which was, again, Maoism. What's happening now is not power consolidation, again, under Xi Jinping. Again, they already achieved that last year. What's happening now is the next step after, look back to Mao Zedong, after he became chairman, the supreme leader of the Communist Party, he began launching systems to establish a new form of communist thought. And under the new party leadership right now, similar to the transition between Leninism and Stalinism under the, again, Soviet Union, Xi Jinping is transitioning from Maoism to Xi Jinping thought. You're watching now the creation of a new ideology of the Chinese Communist Party. With all these programs, the important thing to look at is the big picture, though. Each new program the CCP is launching right now to establish this, you can't look at these as being isolated from one to the next. All of these programs, they hint at a return to policies the CCP was carrying out when it was trying to eliminate religion, culture, and other values that the Communist Party deemed as threats to its power, and as programs to establish a new culture under the CCP, to re-educate the country, so to speak, under Maoist thought. Only now, again, it's not Maoist thought, it's Xi Jinping thought. The big focus now is on these so-called reform-themed top-level meetings of the CCP. It was notably carried out just recently, in secret. They decided to not hold the usual closed news conferences the party's second-in-command usually has. Now, some took that as a sign the CCP is in a weakened state. They don't want the media there. Others took it as a sign that the second-in-command of the CCP, that would be Premier Li Qiang, that he may not have the authority he used to have, that the authority has been, again, consolidated under Xi Jinping. But what was made clear was that, again, this meeting, the new system being rolled out and so on, it even brings the state council, technically the Chinese government, more deeply under control of the CCP. Again, all the systems of power are being aligned under one party leader, again, who seems to be the new chairman, Xi Jinping. AP News notes that China's national legislature wrapped up its annual session Monday with the usual show of near unanimous support for the plans designed to carry out ruling Communist Party leader Xi Jinping's vision for the nation. And notes further in, the nearly 3,000-member National People's Congress, the head body of the CCP, approved a revised state council law that directs China's version of the cabinet to follow Xi's vision. Briefly, why that's important. Now, under the Chinese Communist Party, technically the state council is the government. The Communist Party technically controls the state council, but they were generally seen as being the government of China. What this now does is makes it so the state council has less autonomy. Their power has been brought directly, it seems, under Xi Jinping. And this new decision, again, has, as they say, directs China's version of the cabinet, the state council, to follow Xi's vision. Again, going back to this point we've been talking about, that Xi Jinping appears to be walking the path to becoming the chairman of the CCP. Everything is being brought under him. And notice the vote was 2,883 to 8, with 9 abstentions. Other measures passed by similarly wide margins. The most nays were recorded for the annual report of the Supreme Court, which is approved by a 2,834 to 44 vote. And notes that in brief closing remarks, Zhao Leiji, the legislature's top official, urged the people to unite more closely under the Communist Party's leadership, quote, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core. They note that the party leaders who run the state council used to have a much freer hand in setting economic policy. Again, according to Neil Thomas, a Chinese political fellow at the Asia Society Policy Institute, said in an emailed comment, and he said that, quote, Xi has been astonishingly successful in consolidating his personal hold over the party, which has allowed him to become the key decision maker in all policy domains, he said. Now look, this new system will have broad implications for the entire world, not just for China. This is going to apply to business policy, to food policies, diplomatic relations, even national security. And this is going to be both inside China, aside from the purges and new campaigns starting up, because the CCP is also rolling out new programs on information control, for example. Remember, there's the new national security law under the Chinese Communist Party, and it makes it illegal to do things like, criticize the Chinese Communist Party. Or maybe if you question the CCP's posted economic numbers, you could get charged with treason. The decision to not hold a top news conference after the party meetings this year were pretty telling of the new policies on information control. And it was far from limited to that. Reuters notes, China tightened controls on handling accidents and disasters, increasing penalties on authorities that respond poorly, and tightening governance surveillance of media reporting on emergencies. They note further in that government guidance over news coverage could tighten media restrictions and access in a country that is already on constant guard against reports that could potentially harm social stability and security, some media analysts said. And so in other words, what the CCP is doing is even the information side, even CCP media, which are technically already controlled by the CCP, these will now be more tightly controlled directly under Communist Party leadership. Nothing gets said without the CCP's approval. That was already kind of in place, but the grasp on this is tightening. Channel News Asia said that China's revised state secret law has come into force, a move that has drawn concern over the potential risk of doing business in the country, while also raising alarm bells in Taiwan. They say enacted on Wednesday, May 1st, changes to the law on safeguarding state secrets broaden the scope and depth of the legislation, while also strengthening control by the ruling Communist Party. Now, in addition to this, Al Jazeera notes that Chinese lawmakers have expanded Beijing's state secret law for the first time since 2010, widening the scope of restrictive, sensitive information to work secrets, according to state media. They say further in that analysts say the expanded law is further evidence of Chinese President Xi Jinping's increased focus on national security. They say this has already led to wide-ranging updates to Beijing's anti-espionage law in April, which some countries fear could be used to punish regular business activities. If you're a U.S. business person working in China, this applies to you. They note that raids last year by Chinese police on several management consultancies, including Mintz Group and Bain & Co., have raised concerns among the foreign business community in China. They note as well that a Japanese pharmaceutical executive has also been detained in Beijing on espionage allegations since last March. And furthermore, they note that state secrets currently involve areas ranging from government and Communist Party decision-making to military and diplomatic activities, as well as economic development, science, and technology. So anything the CCP is interested in, which is just about everything. If you say anything in China that damages something the CCP cares about, you could be charged with espionage and could even be sentenced to death. For businesses, this is significant. Foreign investors or business leaders working in China, they're going to be held to these same laws. And the CCP is also expanding its social control over the economy. And with all this being said, it's important to note one other thing. These new programs, they're not coming from a place of strength. The Chinese economy is failing. The real estate industry is going belly up. It's losing factories. It's losing cheap manufacturing. Its goals of a high-tech economy, all of that is fading. Now, I'll be talking more about the CCP's fears of instability only on EpochTV.com, the uncensored stream platform of the Epoch Times. So if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble, click the link in the description below to get access to not only the rest of this episode, but also our other great shows, family-friendly movies, premiere investigative reports, and hard-hitting documentaries on issues that really matter. In fact, my documentary, The Final War, exposes one of the biggest threats to the United States, the Chinese Communist Party. And in the Final War documentary, I expose one of the regime's 100-year systems to defeat the United States, and also explain what it means for America, again, if they were to succeed with it. This infiltration and system of subversion by the CCP is one of the biggest but least understood issues that is impacting the future of America. And it's such an important issue that I've decided dedicated my career to warning people about the threat of the CCP. If you'd like to watch this documentary, you can find the link in the description below as well. It's called The Final War. I'll show you all a trailer of it before we go exclusively to Epoch TV, and I'll see you there.
The greatest threat facing the United States is the CCP.
The Epoch Times investigation team had studied the CCP for years, but what we uncovered was yielding evidence beyond our imagination.
With Chairman Mao, with the Prime Minister, our talks have been characterized by frankness.
The Clinton administration said, oh, don't worry about it. This will be a poison pill for China.
China's strategic goal is to make sure that the U.S. has 4 enemies, and one of them must be a terrorist group.
We are giving of our life's blood so that the Chinese Communist Party can survive and thrive.